This is land of Havilah, 2 Kings 7. Ben-Hadad and his Syrian army are besieging the city of Samaria. There's severe famine in the city. The king of Israel holds Elisha responsible. He swore by God he would remove Elisha's head this day. So he sent an officer to Elisha's house to arrest him. But the elders of the city are in the house with Elisha, and they forcibly detained the officer. The officer says they shouldn't wait on Yahweh to solve the problem. Yahweh created the problem, he says, so why should they expect him to solve it? Elisha will speak to the officer as we go to verse 1. Elisha said, "Hear Yahweh's word. Yahweh says, tomorrow about this time, a seah of fine flour will be sold for a shekel, and 2 seahs of barley for a shekel, in the gate of Samaria." Comment, tomorrow, Elisha says, a shekel will get you 3 gallons of flour, or 6 gallons of barley. The officer will answer him, verse 2. Then the captain on whose hand the king leaned, comment, the king leaned on the officer's hand, meaning this was the king's right-hand man or the king's assistant. The captain, still in verse 2, answered the man of God and said, "Behold, if Yahweh made windows in heaven, could this thing be?" He said, "Behold, you will see it with your eyes, but will not eat of it." Comment, now a change of scene, verse 3. Now there were 4 leprous men at the entrance of the gate. They said to one another, "Why do we sit here until we die? If we say we will enter the city, then the famine is in the city, and we will die there. If we sit here, we also die. Now therefore come and let's surrender to the army of the Syrians. If they save us alive, we will live, and if they kill us, we will only die." Comment, the lepers were outside the walls and gate of the city. Siege or no siege, they couldn't come in because of their leprosy, Leviticus 13:46. The lepers were afraid the Syrians would kill them, so they've been staying close by the wall and gates and not venturing out to the Syrian camp. But as they began to starve, they had to do something. They're going to show themselves to the Syrians and hope for the best. Verse 5. They rose up in the twilight to go to the camp of the Syrians. When they had come to the outermost part of the camp of the Syrians, behold, no man was there. For the Lord had made the army of the Syrians to hear the sound of chariots and the sound of horses, even the noise of a great army. And they said to one another, "Behold, the king of Israel has hired against us the kings of the Hittites and the kings of the Egyptians to attack us." Comment, there were Hittites in the Promised Land before the Israelites invaded, Genesis 15:20. But extra-biblical history and archaeology tells us that the Hittites weren't just in small groups confined to that area. There were massive and powerful Hittite kingdoms to Syria's north. The center of their culture and power was in Anatolia, which is modern-day Turkey. So given their location to Syria's north, the Syrians were more familiar with them than the Israelites. When the Syrians heard, quote, chariots, horses, and even the sound of a great army, end quote, they assumed it was either Egyptians coming from the south or Hittites from the north. But Yahweh was sending them an auditory hallucination to scatter them and break the siege on Samaria. Verse 7. Therefore they arose and fled in the twilight, and left their tents and their horses and their donkeys, even the camp as it was, and fled for their life. Comment, the hallucination came at twilight, just at the time the lepers set out for the Syrian camp, so Yahweh coordinated it with perfect timing. The Syrians fled in confusion, which was Yahweh fulfilling his word from 600 years before, quote, "I will confuse all the people to whom you come, and I will make all your enemies turn their backs on you," Exodus 23:27. So the Syrians abandoned their camp in a panic in the dark, and verse 8. When these lepers came to the outermost part of the camp, they went into one tent and ate and drank, and carried away silver, gold, and clothing, and went and hid it. Then they came back and entered into another tent, and carried things from there also, and went and hid them. Then they said to one another, "We aren't doing right. Today is a day of good news, and we keep silent. If we wait until the morning light, punishment will overtake us. Now therefore come, let's go and tell the king's household." So they came and called to the city gatekeepers, and they told them, "We came to the camp of the Syrians, and behold, there was no man there, not even a man's voice, but the horses tied, and the donkeys tied, and the tents as they were." He called the gatekeepers, and they told it to the king's household within. Comment, coming up, the king believes it's a trap, verse 12. The king arose in the night and said to his servants, I will now show you what the Syrians have done to us. They know that we are hungry. Therefore they are gone out of the camp to hide themselves in the field, saying, When they come out of the city, we shall take them alive and get into the city. Comment: The king of Israel thinks the Syrians are playing out a ruse to get the Israelites to come out, which was reasonable. He's pretty sure of it, as in, I'll tell you exactly what's going on here. But he's not taking into account all the miraculous deliverance that Yahweh provided Israel in the past, even many times in his own conflicts with the Syrians, just in the last chapter. The truth is that the Syrians have all scattered, every man for himself. Verse 13. One of his servants answered, Please let some people take 5 of the horses that remain which are left in the city. Behold, they are like all the multitude of Israel who are left in it. Behold, they are all like the multitude of Israel who are consumed. Let's send and see. Comment: The king's advisors want to at least check it out, to confirm whether the Syrians have really left the camp, and if they have, are they hiding somewhere, waiting in ambush for the Israelites to come out. They should be able to get 5 volunteers because the volunteers would die anyway of starvation like the rest of Israel. But coming up, the king doesn't want to risk 5 horses, which they could otherwise eat. He only wants to risk 2. Verse 14. Therefore they took 2 chariots with horses, and the king sent them out to the Syrian army, saying, Go and see. They went after them to the Jordan, and behold, all the path was full of garments and equipment which the Syrians had cast away in their haste. The messengers returned and told the king. Comment: The scouts got to the camp, and it was empty. So they checked it out more fully. They were able to verify that there was a trail of discarded clothing and equipment all the way to the Jordan River. This was no trap. The Syrians have truly abandoned their camp in a panic. So they returned and told the king. And verse 16. The people went out and plundered the camp of the Syrians. So a seah of fine flour was sold for a shekel, and 2 measures of barley for a shekel, according to Yahweh's word. Comment: Elisha foretold the exact price of flour and barley, but he also predicted that the king's officer wouldn't eat of it. To explain why, the text will reverse time a little bit to give some details about the people pouring out of the gate. Verse 17. The king appointed the captain on whose hand he leaned to be in charge of the gate, and the people trampled over him in the gate, and he died as the man of God had said, who spoke when the king came down to him. Comment: Under orders from the king, the captain tried to control the flow of people out of the gate. The king was trying to control the gathering of plunder to make sure it was done with what he considered to be proper centralized planning, dictatorial style or fascist or socialist style. But the people weren't having it. They trampled the king's officials as they poured out of the gate. The captain never ate of the plunder because he got trampled trying to control the traffic. Verse 18. It happened as the man of God had spoken to the king, saying, 2 seahs of barley for a shekel, and a seah of fine flour for a shekel, shall be tomorrow about this time in the gate of Samaria. And that captain answered the man of God and said, Now behold, if Yahweh made windows in heaven, might such a thing be? And he said, Behold, you will see it with your eyes, but will not eat of it. It happened like that to him, for the people trampled over him in the gate, and he died. Comment: Yahweh couldn't have brought Samaria any closer to the brink of ruin, but he relented, so obviously he's still having patience with them. Certainly the people gorged themselves on food, but once they were satisfied and done rejoicing, there had to come some quiet and calm moments of contemplation and sober thought. Didn't it have to be Yahweh to scatter the Syrians like that? Wasn't he absolutely the God Moses said he was? Therefore, shouldn't they give him his due? Shouldn't they purge their other gods from the land, as Yahweh said? We remember a long time ago that Yahweh cursed the house of Ahab, that Ahab's dynasty would come to an end, 1 Kings 21:22. So the Israelite king is on borrowed time. Maybe a change of administration will help. That'll be in chapter 9, but 2 Kings 8 is next at landofhavilah.net, 2 Kings 8. This is the map of 2 Kings 7. This is the city of Samaria and kingdom of Samaria, also known as Israel or the northern kingdom. To the south, the kingdom of Judah, and further south, Egypt. North of Samaria, there's Syria, and north of that, the Hittites. Zooming out, the Anatolian Peninsula, according to history and archaeology, was the center of Hittite power. 2 Kings 8 is next.